The most beloved doctor on British television spent 18 years in a Cornish village he was never meant to reach, playing a man who was not the character his creator originally invented. Hidden inside Doc Martin is an anagram nobody spotted for years, a family linked to the greatest Sherlock Holmes ever filmed, and a small fishing harbour that has never quite recovered from what the programme did to it.
You keep scratching. Is there something wrong?
Doc, I think you're overreacting.
Shut it down.
Fact 1. He was somebody else first. Doc Martin did not begin as a series about a Cornish GP. It began as a supporting part in a feature film about a widow growing cannabis. In 2000, Martin Clunes appeared in Saving Grace, a comedy written by Craig Ferguson and Mark Crowdy about a woman in a Cornish village who saves herself from bankruptcy by filling her greenhouse with marijuana. Clunes played the local doctor, a genial, slightly shambolic man named Dr. Martin Bamford, who liked to drink, liked the villagers, and bore no resemblance whatsoever to the man audiences would later know. The film did well enough that the character was given a life of his own. 2 feature-length television films followed, one in 2001 and another in 2003, both set in Cornwall, both starring Clunes as Dr. Bamford. Then came the reinvention. When ITV commissioned a full series in 2004, the character was rebuilt from the ground up. The surname changed to Ellingham. The warmth was removed entirely. The amiable village doctor became a brilliant, brusque, socially catastrophic London surgeon exiled to a place he could not stand. The 2 men shared a first name, a profession, and a county, and nothing else at all. The reboot was a considerable gamble. Audiences had already met a Dr. Martin in Cornwall and rather liked him, and asking them to accept a colder, harder man under a new surname was not the obvious commercial choice. It worked because the new version had something the old one never did: friction. It is one of the strangest origin stories in British television. A character the nation took to its heart was created by taking a likable one and making him thoroughly, gloriously difficult.
Do you have any chest pain, dizziness, or nausea?
Fact 2. A surgeon afraid of blood. The premise of Doc Martin is a joke that should not have sustained 10 series. It sustained 10 series. Martin Ellingham is not a country GP by training or by inclination. He is one of the finest vascular surgeons in the country, a specialist whose entire working life is conducted inside human blood vessels, and he develops hemophobia, a fear of blood, in the middle of an operation. Hemophobia is a genuine and well-documented condition. What makes Ellingham's case so unusual is not the phobia itself, but its target. The one man in Britain who could least afford to have it. Unable to operate, he retrains as a general practitioner and takes the only post available to him in the Cornish village where he spent his childhood holidays with his aunt. The consequence shapes every episode. A village surgery is not a refuge from blood. Cuts, injuries, childbirth, minor procedures, the ordinary daily business of general practice keeps placing the one thing he cannot look at directly in front of him. He gags. He turns away. He carries on regardless because he is extraordinarily good at everything else. The series never resolved it cheaply and never let him off. The comedy and the sadness come from precisely the same place. A man of enormous ability, permanently at war with his own body, refusing to admit that anything is wrong.
Mrs. Tishel, please, stop talking.
Stop talking?
Or stop thinking.
Shut up. Waste of time.
Fact 3. The name hides its creator. The series was created by Dominic Minghella, a writer whose earlier credits included Hamish Macbeth and who would go on to create Robin Hood for the BBC. He gave his difficult doctor a surname that sounds entirely and reassuringly English: Ellingham. Write the 2 words out and look at the letters. Ellingham, Minghella. 9 letters each, and exactly the same 9. Martin Ellingham is a perfect anagram of his creator's surname. The joke is beautifully hidden, in the way the best ones always are. It sits in every episode title card, every prescription pad, every time Louisa says his name in exasperation, and for years, most of the audience walked straight past it. It is also quietly appropriate. The creator rearranged himself, letter by letter, into his own leading man. Minghella came from a remarkable family. His elder brother was Anthony Minghella, the writer and director of The English Patient, who won the Academy Award for Best Director in 1997 and died in 2008. The Minghellas were from the Isle of Wight, where their parents ran an ice cream business that still carries the family name. Two brothers, two entirely different kinds of storytelling, and one buried anagram that has been sitting in plain sight on British television since 2004.
Would you help me, please?
No.
Fact 4. Portwenn does not exist. Portwenn is not a real place. The village, where Martin Ellingham glowers down the hill at the harbour, is Port Isaac, on the north coast of Cornwall, roughly halfway between Padstow and Tintagel. It is a genuine working fishing village, and a very old one. A settlement of narrow lanes and steep slate roofs built down a cleft in the cliffs, with a harbour at the bottom and almost nowhere to park at the top. One of its alleyways is so tight that it has been known for generations as Squeeze Belly Alley. The geography that makes Port Isaac so striking on screen is exactly the geography that makes it so awkward to film in. The doctor's surgery is a real cottage, standing high above the harbour with the view that appears behind Clunes in half the exterior scenes. The school, the shop, the pub, the harbour wall, all real, all in daily use, all borrowed by the production for months at a time. Cornwall itself became part of the appeal. The wider coastline around Port Isaac supplied the cliffs, beaches and farmland for scenes set outside the village, and the weather supplied everything else. For an audience watching on a dark winter evening, a considerable amount of the comfort of Doc Martin came from simply looking at the place. Nothing in Portwenn was built. The village needed no set dressing and no invented street. What audiences see is simply Port Isaac with a different name laid over it, which is precisely why it feels so solid, and precisely why what happened next was so difficult for the people who live there. Fact 5. The village paid a price. Before Doc Martin, Port Isaac was a beautiful and comparatively quiet Cornish village of a few hundred residents. Afterwards, it became a destination. The effect that specialists call screen tourism, the pull that draws visitors to places they have watched on television, arrived in Port Isaac with unusual force. Coach parties came. Visitor numbers climbed steeply and stayed there. People arrived to photograph the surgery, walk the harbour wall, and stand where Louisa stood. For a village built long before the motor car, on lanes never intended to carry one, the pressure was considerable. Parking, congestion, the strain on a small community during filming months, and the wider Cornish difficulty of housing being turned over to holiday, let's all intensified together. Some residents welcomed the trade the series brought. Others found their own village increasingly hard to live in. The production was conscious of it. Filming was negotiated with the village rather than imposed on it, and over 18 years the cast and crew became familiar faces rather than visitors. Port Isaac had a second export in the same period. The Fishermen's Friends, a shanty-singing group of local men, were signed by a major record label and later had 2 feature films made about them. For a village of this size, the run of attention was extraordinary, and not everybody in it was entirely delighted. If you're enjoying this, it would mean a lot if you subscribed. It helps us keep making videos like this one. Just hit that button and you'll never miss a new one. Fact 6. His wife made it. Doc Martin was not made for Martin Clunes by a distant production company. It was made by his wife. Philippa Braithwaite is a producer and Clunes' partner in Buffalo Pictures, the company the couple built together. She produced Saving Grace, the film that created the original Dr. Martin. She then produced the television films and then every series of Doc Martin that followed. The pair married in 1997 and have worked side by side ever since. This is unusual. Long-running television is normally an arrangement between an actor and an institution, a broadcaster, a production company, a rotating cast of executives with their own priorities. Doc Martin was a family business. Decisions about how many episodes to make, when to film, when to rest the show, and when to stop were taken inside a marriage rather than a boardroom. It is very probably the reason the series lasted as long as it did without visible strain. Doc Martin filmed in blocks with substantial gaps between them, sometimes 2 years, which gave Clunes room for other work and kept the format from wearing thin. That kind of patience is easy to describe and almost impossible to achieve when a broadcaster wants another run immediately. Ellingham's world was, from the very beginning, run by the two people with the strongest reason to protect it. Fact 7. Sherlock Holmes was family. Martin Clunes was born into the theatre and lost it early. His father was Alec Clunes, one of the most respected stage actors of his generation, an actor-manager who ran the Arts Theatre in London and appeared in films including Richard III, alongside Laurence Olivier. Alec Clunes died in 1970, when Martin was 8 years old. The family connection does not end there. Martin's mother, Daphne, was a cousin of an actor born Peter Jeremy William Huggins, who took the stage name Jeremy Brett. Sources have variously called Brett Martin's uncle or his cousin. Clunes himself has simply said, "My cousin Jeremy." Brett is the definitive Sherlock Holmes. His performance for Granada Television between 1984 and 1994 is the one against which every subsequent Holmes has been measured, and the one a great many viewers still regard as unimprovable. It was Brett who encouraged the young Martin to pursue acting professionally. It is a genuinely strange piece of British television history. The actor who gave the nation its greatest Sherlock Holmes and the actor who gave it one of its best-loved doctors came out of the same family. There is a further echo in it. Both created characters defined by extraordinary intelligence paired with social difficulty, men who see everything and cannot manage the ordinary business of being liked. Holmes and Ellingham are not the same character, but they are recognizably cut from the same cloth by two actors who shared a family. Fact 8. 2 aunts, 1 Ellingham. Martin Ellingham has almost nobody. His parents, when they eventually appear, are among the coldest ever written into a warm-hearted drama. The single relative who anchors him to Portwenn is an aunt, and across the run of the series that aunt was played by 2 different women. For the first 4 series, Aunt Joan Norton was played by Stephanie Cole, a formidable presence in British television since Tenko and Waiting for God. Joan was Martin's link to the village, the woman whose farm he had visited as a boy, and effectively the only person alive who could tell him he was being impossible and expect to be heard. When Cole left, the production did something braver than recasting. Rather than handing Joan to another actress, it wrote her out and introduced a different aunt altogether. Ruth Ellingham, a retired forensic psychiatrist, played by Dame Eileen Atkins from the 5th series onwards. The change shifted the whole centre of gravity. Joan had been affectionate. Ruth was clinical, a woman who analysed her nephew rather than comforted him, and who was entirely his intellectual equal. Atkins, one of the great stage actresses of her generation and a co-creator of Upstairs, Downstairs, played her with a dryness that handed Clunes a completely new sparring partner. Losing a beloved character and gaining a better one is a rare trick in long-running drama. Doc Martin managed it in a single series. Fact 9. The world rebuilt Portwenn. Doc Martin travelled further than almost any British drama of its era, and it did so not by being exported, but by being rebuilt. The format was licensed and remade in country after country, each version relocating the impossible doctor to a local equivalent of a remote coastal village. Spain produced Dr. Mateo, set in a fishing village in Asturias, which ran for 5 series. Germany followed with Dr. Martin on ZDF. France made its own adaptation, and further remakes appeared across Europe and beyond, at least 7 international versions in total, before Fox launched an American remake in 2025. The reason the format travels is that it is almost entirely portable. It requires a beautiful, isolated, faintly claustrophobic community, a doctor who is brilliant and unbearable, and a population who need him and cannot stand him. Every country has somewhere that fits, and every country recognizes the man. What did not travel was Clunes himself. The The performance is a remarkably precise piece of work. The flat delivery, the barely contained impatience, the tiny flickers of feeling that escape before he can suppress them. Ellingham is only funny and only moving because Clunes plays him completely straight and never once asks the audience to like him, which is why the original outlasted all of them. A format can be licensed. What Clunes does with a raised eyebrow and 4 seconds of silence cannot. Fact 10. They chose the ending. Very few long-running British dramas are allowed to finish on their own terms. Doc Martin was. The 10th series was announced in advance as the last, and its run ended in October 2022, but the story did not close there. A final Christmas episode went out on Christmas Day, the true last hour of the series, 18 years after it began. Alongside it came a separate documentary, Farewell Doc Martin, looking back across the whole run with the cast and crew. The decision belonged to Clunes and Braithwaite. It was not forced by a broadcaster, and it was not forced by falling figures. The series was still drawing large and loyal audiences, and ITV would have been perfectly happy to continue. Speaking a few days before the finale aired, Clunes put it simply, "It feels like the right time to finish." That instinct is exactly why the ending works. Ellingham is not given a personality transplant in the final hour. He is still short, still impossible, still hopeless at small talk. He is also a man with a wife, children, a village that has decided to keep him, and something very close to a life. There is one more thing the planning gave them. Because the ending was chosen rather than imposed, the final series could be written towards a conclusion instead of stopping mid-sentence, and threads that had been running for the best part of 2 decades were allowed to close on purpose. Very few shows that last this long are ever given the chance. Port Isaac said goodbye properly. The village turned out, the cast came back, and the shop fronts that had carried the invented names of Portwenn for 18 years were photographed one last time before they went back to being exactly what they had always been.